we've tended to aggregate our business with a very limited number of people in each trade, because my feeling is if I can give them a larger quantity of business, they're going to pay better attention to me. And then the other really critical thing from our perspective is to pay people faster than they fail. And these are competitive schools, because I've now taken the attitude that since I'm not that thrilled with the talent pool that's in the industry, maybe I'm better growing my own. So I've taken on a little bit of a philosophy that I'd rather have brains over experience. And first of all, the competition is not great in New York. If you were to go and do online reviews of other firms, most people have 2 stars if they're lucky. We have almost all 5-star reviews and 80 or 90 of them on Yelp, and that's not by accident. We're really conscientious. We get back to people fast, which is not the norm. And then there's just sort of a culture here that we're prideful in what we do.
In a market defined by uncertainty, where every second counts, one opportunity can change everything. Are you ready to make your move? The time is now! Welcome to the Dream is Real podcast.
Thanks for tuning in to The Dream is Real. This is the place if you're looking to buy, sell, invest, or advance your career in real estate. Before we get started, make sure that you like, share, subscribe, turn on your notifications. Don't want you to miss an episode as we bring you great content. Today, I am here with Michael Vinocur of BEMNY, a boutique firm that's tripled in size, as far as I understand, over the last 5 years, being fiercely proactive in probably the toughest market out there, arguably, but I would argue for it, and that is Manhattan, New York City. Michael, thanks for joining us. Was I accurate in my intro there?
Except that you gave our website. The firm's name is actually Building Equity Management.
Building Equity Management. Okay, I had here. So BEMNY is not an acronym that you use. It's Building.
Well, everybody calls us BEM, but
got it. Okay.
BEMNY is our domain.
All right. Well, great. So BEMNY.com.
Yep.
All right. Awesome. So, Michael, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, BEM.
Okay. Well, the short version, I've done a number of things in my life. After business school, I worked for Hewlett-Packard on the West Coast for a year. Then I came back. I teamed up actually with my father, and we ran a tech trade conference in the printing industry and had a good run in the 90s, sold it, and the cash from that business sale allowed me to get into the real estate space. I started with a partner who had a general contracting background buying brownstone shells in Harlem. So essentially 100-year-old brownstone 4-floor buildings in Harlem that were uninhabitable. We did gut renovations, turned them into 4-family rentals. We did 4 of those, sold a couple, then got into larger walk-up buildings in Washington Heights, which is north of Harlem and Manhattan. And initially, I outsourced all my management because there was too much we didn't know about rent stabilization, and we didn't really have the back office infrastructure. But the stars eventually aligned, and we had an opportunity in 2012 to take my portfolio, another portfolio from somebody who was an investor who was self-managing and wanted their lives back, and then my original partner had a third party that he knew. And so we started with 9 rental buildings, and then it just kind of grew organically. We started getting really good Yelp reviews, which has driven our business a lot. A couple of years into it, we got an introduction from an attorney to a condop, which is a unique New York animal, which is kind of a hybrid of a condo and a co-op, on 82nd and Madison. So that was our first toe in the water in that space. And then we've just kind of grown. A lot of it was driven by online reviews, and then a lot of referrals since then and reputation. So and then post-COVID, we tripled our revenues in 5 years. We're now north of 125 buildings, probably
Wow.
65% rentals, 35% co-ops and condos.
What was the major catalyst post COVID that caused that kind of growth?
I can't really put my finger on it. Again, first of all, the competition is not great in New York. If you were to go and do online reviews of other firms, most people have, 2 stars if they're lucky. We have almost all 5-star reviews and 80 or 90 of them on Yelp, and that's not by accident. We're really conscientious. We get back to people fast, which is not the norm. And then there's just sort of a culture here that we're prideful in what we do. And then
What
I
do you,
think we're also getting, it's also New York, while it's big, is not that big. And so you start to connect with mortgage brokers, or, we got a 48-story tower on 52nd Street from a broker at Douglas Elliman who had a good experience on a transaction and a co-op sale in a building that we manage in the West Village. So those sort of things kind of add up. We've had now multiple attorneys who've recommended us to buildings. So it's a big town, but it's kind of a small town.
Yep, and your name means a lot in any environment. But did you anything that you experienced prior with property management companies maybe shift the way that you thought and how you do business now?
I don't know. I've always run small businesses, so it's just I have my way of doing things, which strives to be an expert as much as you can be an expert, and to be professional and responsive. We're really a service industry, so you have to serve people. So that means you have to call them back, you have to email back them, you have to text them back. What I found is having owned properties where we really had to roll up our sleeves and fix everything, that ended up being a very good foundation, because I think being able to touch the physical plant and understand project management is key. A lot of big companies will just outsource it to engineers and architects, and my attitude is not to involve trade, design professionals unless you have to. But it just slows everything up and makes it more expensive.
So, am I hearing you correctly? Maybe the complexity of some of the buildings that you took on early on led to you maybe being well versed in what is required.
I mean, that was a factor. And then there was a point for a small fraction of time where my original partner in Harlem and I launched a design build business. So where we were offering design and construction offerings together. And I learned a lot there, because I was more the business back office guy, but that forced me to get, out on site very often and deal with complexities of build out. So that ended up being a good foundation. But what I find, particularly like even in interviewing for new people for our company, is that the industry by and large is not that hands-on. So I think that's a competitive advantage.
Why do you think that is?
It's a very mediocre industry, at least out here. I don't imagine it's much different elsewhere, because I remember years ago living in Hoboken and being frustrated about how bad management was there. So it's nobody comes out of school striving to go into property management. Though we are recruiting a lot of young people out of reasonably competitive schools, because I've now taken the attitude that since I'm not that thrilled with the talent pool that's in the industry, maybe I'm better growing my own. So I've taken on a little bit of a philosophy that I'd rather have brains over experience, and then I'll teach them.
Got it.
It limits your growth a little bit, but at least I get what I want.
Are there any, say, intangible characteristics that you would say you'd find in someone that you can't necessarily teach, but certain character traits that you feel like are a good fit?
Yes, but you never know 100%. But I think I want people that come across as intelligent and personable, because on the condo side you have to deal with a board, and so you have to be able to leave a good impression. You have to be able to run a meeting. You have to be able to interact with people and act like you have command over what's going on. And then on the rental side, they have to interact with the owners of the buildings. We have our agents even write a financial overview every month when we send out financials. And so they need to be groomable so they can look smart and competent. And a lot of it is, it's you get it out of your gut. Some of it's, I use educational background as a screen. If they went to a good school, that tells me that that school let them in, so they've done a certain amount of filtering for us. Um, but generally, what I'm finding myself doing is looking at the person, saying, "Can I be excited about having this person in my office 5 days a week for the number of hours that I'm in my office?"
Right.
And if I can't get excited about having them working with me day in, day out, they're not the right fit.
The Dream Select Bootcamp app helped me pass my real estate exam and continues to help me to this day as a new agent. The AI mentor comes in clutch at open houses. Sign up today. You won't regret it.
Well, you used the term earlier, culture, and I think that's important. Something that putting out a system that's learnable, teachable, duplicatable. One of the things that I heard you talk about is how you make sure that the communication with building owners and boards is important. Anywhere else that you feel like the industry sometimes falls short, that you're able to fill in the gaps?
Well, I mean, I think follow up. What I see on the condo side is that when we get approached by new prospects, I always ask them what's motivating you to switch companies, and I know that 90% of the times they're going to say the answer is lack of follow up, to do lists that don't get long response time, to do lists that don't change month to month. So it's not that hard to be organized enough to make that happen. Our goal actually with the condos is, it's interesting, when I go in, if they're meeting monthly, the first question I ask is, do you have the appetite to meet less frequently? Because too many meetings is the biggest limiter in my mind on how many buildings an agent can manage, because he needs to have a life.
Sure.
And if somebody has 8 or 10, if they have 10 buildings and they all meet monthly, that's 2.5 meetings a week that are after hours on Zoom, when you've got to do an agenda and you've got to do minutes afterwards. So I try to, we're somewhat selective in our clients now. I won't take on everybody. So when I go into a new prospect, I say, do you have the appetite to meet less than monthly if you're currently meeting monthly? And if they say no, if they're a large enough building, I can rationalize it. But if they're a modest sized building and they say no, then I just say, then we're probably not the right fit, and I let it go.
So if somebody is, let's say, not resistant but hesitant in a way, what's your justification to them? It sounds to me like you're capable with attention to detail and following through to do more with less. But how do you
Well, in
justify
that case,
that?
I mean, if they're resistant, I may go back and say, okay, we'll meet monthly for the first 6 months, but I want you to be open to the idea that maybe that doesn't have to continue. I understand we need to prove ourselves because you're getting over the trauma of the company that you're firing.
Right.
And invariably, if we're really doing our job, there isn't something to talk about we're emailing and communicating all month long anyway. So the formal meetings don't need to be that frequent. And we like boards where the people are successful, busy people who are it's a volunteer position. So if we can get them the peace of mind where they realize they don't have to be thinking about this all the time, that's our goal.
Right.
It means that we're doing our job well, and it makes our life easier if they leave us alone.
And that's a win for them too, right? I mean, who wants to? I don't know anybody who gets to the end of their life and says, "I wish I sat in more meetings." Right?
Well, there's some people who don't have a fully engaged life. It may be a form of kind of recreation, socialization.
Okay.
So we don't want those buildings. but we're getting a lot of Soho and Tribeca, very high-end boutique buildings where the people are, very successful and have better things to do, and that's the perfect client for us.
That sounds ideal. Now, efficiency has always been important, but in today's day and age, there's plenty of ways to be more efficient, more automated. I mean, typically, property management has been known for being old school, but what have you and your firm done in the way of maybe technology to advance forward?
Okay, yeah, I'm big on technology. So we have a piece of software that's not that highly adopted in New York called Propertyware. That's sort of the foundation for everything we do here. And so it's a specialized piece of software for property management. In terms of automation, cool things are there's a tenant portal. So we're getting 90% of our rent or common charge payments electronically now. It automatically routes to the right bank. It automatically posts to the accounting system. It's got automation. If we get checks in, we have a scanner in the office that does an OCR on the check and can figure out who the person is, what the bank account is. Once it knows that this bank account is linked to this tenant in this building, it knows where to route the money. It also has some cool tools on payables, which is a big, there's a lot of bills that we have to pay. We're paying 95% of those electronically by ACH through the software. I have a back office that queues up everything. We have a workflow also for invoice approval. We use a software called Evernote, which was never really meant for this usage, but early on when I saw how much paper we had, I said I needed something that's a paperless workflow. So everybody's got Fujitsu fast scanners on their desks. Everything gets scanned into Evernote. We actually have outsourced to the Philippines tagging of files because we tag every single scanned file so we can find them. And then there's an internal, during COVID, we said, how are we going to deal with approval of invoices? So we came up with virtual inboxes using this Evernote software. So everybody, if you're an agent of this building, it's your invoice, it gets dumped in your inbox. Everybody can see how behind you are on processing them because we all have visibility. And then they basically approve it, they move it into another queue and it gets input into the software. So that's worked beautifully. We're starting to play with AI quite a bit. I got into kind of a deep rabbit hole yesterday on using Claude to profile prospective buildings for me. So if somebody calls in, I now have a skill that I've taught it where it will comb city databases and tell me regulatory compliance items, whether they've been done or not, if there's outstanding violations, how many units are, who the current management company is, et cetera, et cetera. It's brilliant. And then I have my new real big pet project is we have huge compliance requirements in New York, unlike anywhere probably in the country. And I finally decided we're getting too big to manage it on a Google Doc spreadsheet. It's just too many tabs across the bottom, and every time you add a new building, you got to put it in every single tab. So I have some background of having played with database software, and I realized that's where I had to go. And I found a product called Airtable that we're now building out an application around. I hired a software consultant, and if it works, it's going to be a real competitive advantage because even some of the biggest companies in the New York market are still using spreadsheets for tracking this stuff.
Sure.
And I'm going to have tools in theory where I can assign tasks internally in the company, and people can upload photos when they've gone to a business building to fix something. I'm going to have automation to go out to insurance brokers to tell them that our policies are expiring. Where are you on renewals? I'm going to have tools for tracking boiler registrations, and there's something called Local Law 11 where we do facade studies. And if it works, all this stuff is going to run through this single platform with like custom developed interfaces based on what your role is in the company. So
there's so much possibility. Well, I'm hoping for that for you. I think you're going down the right path. Anthropic Claude, tremendous tool for many reasons. And really the answer to everything is almost everything is yes. It's just a matter of finding the right framework.
And you have to be able to carve out enough time to really think about how do you want to structure this stuff. And it'll be evolutionary because we're never going to be, if this software platform works, it's never going to be done.
Right.
There's always going to be new stuff. But the stuff that people don't need to be doing, I don't want to have people doing.
So you mentioned compliance and New York City and compliance and let's just call it red tape. There's a lot of it. Do you think things are getting more difficult in your space, easier in your space, different?
No, it's just constant add-on. And actually it's driven some new business because there's some people that have been self-managing that have both on there's condos that self-manage and there's rental buildings where the owners have been managing it. And then on the rental side, a lot of times there's generational transfer, and the next generation really doesn't want to do the work. And one of the things that's really swaying people to not do it themselves is the regulatory compliance, because it's close to impossible to keep up on it if you're just doing your own little free building portfolio.
Sure.
We have to know, and we have enough net, we're on enough attorney distribution lists for newsletters and things of that sort that when new stuff comes up, we know about it. But we had to do last year, there was a massive carbon footprint reduction, what they call them local laws, that you had to get a consultant, and you had to file any building over 25,000 square feet in the city had to do it. And there were potentially massive penalties if you came in above certain thresholds of carbon consumption. There was another one we had to do where you had to, they kind of came out of left field that we had to get all the public area lights to LED if they weren't, and we had to have an inspection and we had to certify it. Then we have elevator inspections every single year. Then there's another elevator inspection we have to do on our own, which used to be done by the city, which they dump back on the owners. Fire extinguishers have to be tagged and inspected every year. It's on and on and on. So this piece of software is going to be cool because we're building out sections. Every time one of these comes up, there'll be a way to capture it inside the software.
Excellent.
And the problem is if you don't comply, the fines can be giant.
Sure. And we know, municipalities, governments, very good at communicating these things when they're put out. Obviously, I'm being facetious.
Well, they do, not as good as they could be. But we have a composting law in New York, which is absurd. It has to cost them so much more than the value, and they're selectively. I don't know if it's a Mayor Mandami thing. They're starting to ticket now, so you have to put this separate garbage can out once a week for composting. It could be empty, but if it's empty, you're not in violation. But if you don't put it out, you get a $50 ticket or $100 ticket.
Who administers that ticket? Is it
it's the Department of Sanitation.
Oh, so the Department of Sanitation can, in their processes, say,
this falls under their umbrella. When you speak to sanitation workers, they're not thrilled that they have to deal with compost. It's another garbage can.
Well, imagine having to stop at every single can, whether it's full or not. That's got to be.
And in a small building, in a 5 or 10 unit building, how much compost are they really? How much food waste are they really segregating? And if people have garbage disposals, they're not segregating.
Right.
But the politicians don't come to the industry to ask before they implement; they just do it. And then people, crunchy people. We had co-op buildings where they heard about the law. They're like, "When are we getting a can?" They're very excited about it. So there's a will for it, but I don't think it makes any economic sense.
Right. A lot of times it doesn't have to. So there you go. We'll leave that there. One thing I did want to pick your brain about for our audience, because I think for the investors, for those at any level, from the fix and flip to the larger scale, I think could benefit is vendor relationships, right? From a property management standpoint, I imagine a big part of what you do and the value that you bring to the table is the ability to source the right vendors for the job. Can you give our audience some sense of how to do that successfully?
It's half luck, half perseverance. And it's sort of a never-ending thing because some people that are good all of a sudden stop being so good and they have to be replaced.
Right.
We've tended to aggregate our business with a very limited number of people in each trade, because my feeling is if I can give them a larger quantity of business, they're going to pay better attention to me. And then the other really critical thing from our perspective is to pay people faster than anybody else. And my thought, and luckily most of our buildings have decent cash flow. There's very few where I ever have to sit on an invoice. And we've got this workflow where I can pay. I'm actually initiating all the payments twice a week, every Tuesday and Friday. So to the extent that the invoices are queued up, I'm paying people electronically twice a week. So my go-to plumber Julio views us as the best payer in his whole
Sure.
portfolio.
If
And
there's one way to solicit loyalty, it's paying people on time.
I mean, there's a building where we actually represent the original sponsor of a big co-op in the West Village, and we had a leak, and they still own a bunch of apartments. We had a leak into one of our apartments, a lead bend. I brought in my roaming super, and we cut the ceiling open. There was a lead bend that was leaking and had to be replaced. The building has its own super, and he couldn't get his plumber out for 4 days. And he said the problem is that the management company pays them too slowly, so we're not that important to them.
There you
My
go.
guy was there the next morning at 9 o'clock, but that's because I give him a lot of work and I pay him quickly. And then my other GC, who I probably am 80% of his business, he was there the following day to patch up the whole ceiling. So that stuff, it's hard to impress to prospective clients how valuable that is, but it really is.
Wow,
And
that's
then we have an engineer that we like for facade studies, and we have different people at different price points for roofing and exterior work. I have one electrician who's getting most of my electrical work because he's there when I need him, and he's got a brain and doesn't bullshit us. He shows up. That stuff is really critical, but it's tough. And there's certain people who are widely used in New York who I've had bad experience with, and they're kind of blacklisted here. And there's also, it's fairly widespread that people will overcharge in New York. So I think one of the values we bring is that we know what things should cost. Just because somebody's really good, it doesn't give them the ability to charge 2x.
Sure. Yeah, a lot of times you cross that bridge, the price goes way up. One thing that you hit on that we often talk about here is surrounding yourself with the right team. I think just based on this conversation, any building owner in and around New York City that would need a property management company would benefit greatly from speaking with you. Michael, how could our audience get in contact with you for your services?
I'm not shy about just putting my cell phone out there. So it's 212-380-7953. My email is mvinocur, MV as in Victor, INOCUR @BEMNY.com. And if you call or email, I will get back to you same day.
Awesome. Well, Michael, thank you for joining us today. Thank you for joining us as well. This is The Dream is Real. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. If you want to follow us, you can do so on Instagram and TikTok at Dream Select Realty, or you can follow us on X at Dream Select Home. If you want to be part of the program, send us an email to hometeam@dreamselectrealty.com. We will see you next time. Just remember, the dream is real.